This is kind of like these are the stories that you hear from the OG day, the old days where you didn't have all this technology. But I guess as technology kind of proliferated, I mean, there's like the internet was a thing back then. Remember 56K modems and the sound of the modem that you dialed up, and if it was a good sound, you had a good connection. Tied up the lines, parents get pissed, all that stuff. But that started the communication between different scenes, right? So there's like famously like the news groups where like different regions would talk shit to each other, and basically I mean, I guess during that period you were part of the SoCal group, and it seems that like Southern California was kind of the mecca of high level Street Fighter play at the time, and it was like if you had to beat the people in Southern California, and so I guess you were part of the competitive scene for since the beginning, and I remember that I think I saw you in a video clip of one of the first Evos, when it was called like B3 or whatever. And,
Battle by the Bay.
Yeah, Battle by the Bay, and I guess Battle by the Bay. And I guess you were competing in those times. Where did the commentary stuff come from? Is this something that came way later, or what were you doing at the time when this stuff was just starting? Were you just a player, or were there other activities that you did as an FGC person?
Yeah, so basically back in the day, there was no streaming, there was no commentary and stuff. Like if you actually watch the whole B3 tape, there's no commentary. Yeah. It's just direct capture of the matches. In fact, back in those days, like if someone tried to do commentary, we'd tell them to shut up, because we're just like, this doesn't seem right at all. This is terrible. Like, why do we want to talking? We just want to watch the game kind of thing. Yeah. And so I mean, back then I was just a competitor, but even back then I was really obsessed with trying to spread fighting game knowledge. So like I also became known as an FAQ writer. That's why I have like the X-Men versus Street Fighter combo FAQ and the CVS 2 FAQ, which is like my magnum opus basically, And so even back then I was trying to spread that knowledge. So I'd be on the news groups and trying to help, well, the news groups not so much, because everybody there was, they were all like the good players and stuff like that. Yeah. So, what really happened was, went to B3. That's where I met like Tom and Tony. And in fact, in the Alpha 2 tournament, I ended up losing to Tom Cannon in that tournament. Yeah. But once we went to B4, that was years later, and that was in Folsom up in Northern California. And, as soon as I got there, I just went up to Tom and Tony. I was like, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? And so like I started helping. And so from that point forward, I kind of like, that's how I was kind of like, a lot of people don't realize, but like for the longest of time before I was doing commentary, I was kind of part of like the main Evo staff. Like I was like guy number 5 or 6. It was like me and Jimmy Shin JN. Like the two of us were like number 5 and 6. We always called ourselves like, yeah, we're 5 and 6. Yeah, kind of things. And so I used to help with Evo a lot. And the commentary, only started because I don't remember if it was Seb, but like one of the guys who first started streaming early, before even Spooky was streaming, I think it was Seb, like was starting to stream some Street Fighter 4. And again, this is Street Fighter 4 now. Like we've already hit the resurgence kind of thing. Yeah. And, at first I was like, I don't like commentary. This sucks. Like, same thing as it was before. Yeah. But, I'm also the kind of person, like I would listen to the commentary. I'm like, this commentary is terrible. Like they're not even talking about the matches. They're just whatever. Blah, 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 blah. It's so funny because like these are all things that I do now, but like,
we all grow into it.
I was like, right. And I was just like, you know what? I can't knock it until I try it.
Sure.
Like that's how my brain has always worked, which is so un-internet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, throwing shade at the internet. Yeah.
The internet is like, we'll knock it and not have tried it ever, kind of thing. And so when Vi was doing the when we went to Shiggle BMX's garage, so there's a guy named Shiggle BMX, and SHGL is Southern Hills Golfland, so he was always there, and he would always ride his BMX there, so he just became like
a cool
Shiggle
name.
BMX. Yeah. and he started running the offline sessions for Street Fighter 4. Eventually, VIE basically kind of, I don't want to say like co-opted it, but it was right after Bar Fights 2 that Gutex threw, and the East Coast just came and just destroyed all of us. And so VIE was like, no. Like, I like he has a lot of SoCal pride for obvious reasons. Yeah. And so he started going to the Shiggle BMX weeklies because he wanted to train everybody and not have us all suck. And so I eventually went there as well because I wanted to see what VIE was doing. And in the same way, I wanted to help. And then AJ Papa was one of the guys who first brought a PC there and just was like, I'm going to start streaming. And, VIE was trying to commentate on what he was doing while playing, and he just couldn't because when you're playing fighting games, you're just so, engrossed in it.
Oh, yeah, it's weird too. Like you're commentating, you're
right?
like, yeah.
You can't really have a serious game while trying to talk to your chat. It's impossible.
No, it's already hard enough to be a TO and, play in your own tournament. I mean, all of the players who be their own TOs, they'll tell you that, but then commentating on top of everything, it's just, that just seems unthinkable right now. That's something that you just don't do nowadays.
It just adds to your mental stack. So you can't even play anymore, you know, when you're actually like trying to commentate while you play. So VIE knew that I wrote FAQs and was really good at explaining things because by this point, I was always on Shoryuken.com. I was always helping a lot of the beginners. I would always write like these big articles and stuff like that. And so Alex was like, James, you come and explain what I'm doing. And I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, this is my chance to try to commentate, because like I think I could do it better than everyone else. So let's prove it. And I jumped on the mic and it was really hard and I sucked. And like it was it was way harder than I thought it was going to be. These days it's a little bit easier because you have so many people to model your commentary after. Like you've listened to Say Jam for so long, so it's like I'm just gonna jump on the mic and try to be like Say Jam, and kind of talk about the things the way that he does. And so like when we were like trying to do it at first, I mean we were making up everything ourselves, like we were trying to come up with our own ways. And what I wanted to do in particular was to focus on the strategy and why and, talk about that kind of stuff where, like I said, a lot of the other commentary that I was critical of was nobody was talking about anything. They would just be talking about random things that weren't even fighting game related or just, it was basically like your chance for comedy routine. Like you would just jump up there and try to be funny, while the game was happening. Yeah. And I mean, there was commentary before this, famously during the Family Fun Third Strike era where Dr. Sub-Zero was doing a lot of commentary, but a lot of his commentary was just inside jokes. He knew them all, and he would just like make fun of them, and he had his own style there. But that was kind of different than what we got to by the time we got to like the Street Fighter 4 era. And I really, really wanted to do more analytical commentary. And that's basically just kind of, and then one tournament randomly, like me and Ultra David got paired up to do it and to commentary together. And we had only just become friends because of the Shoryuken.com forums, because both of us were really loud people when HDR was being developed. And so we were like, we should nerf this. And David was a Honda player. I hated Honda because I was a Kami player. So I was like, nerf everything. And he was like, don't nerf all this stuff, And interestingly enough, we had good conversations. Like we discovered the other person was actually really logical and analytical. So we actually kind of gained respect for each other. And then when we started commentating, we kind of already had that friendship, mutual respect. And then it just grew from there. And I was really lucky because to have a consistent partner to learn commentary with and to always, commentate with him. We talked to Z about this one time. He was talking to us. He was like, I'm so jealous that you guys get to work with each other, because one time he heard us talking after like an NCR. Me and David were like, so how do you think it went? And he was like, I think we did all right, but I think we should try to do this. And I didn't like the way, and Z was like, you guys talk about this? Like,
No, that is a great position to be in.
And we were really lucky. So we had that ability to learn, commentary by having a consistent partner and bouncing feedback off of each other.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about your experience as kind of you're a pioneer in this field, and like you were one of the first to really take the commentary stuff seriously, and then of course with Ultra David, you guys formed Ultra Chen, and now you guys kind of created like this almost like an archetype for this kind of the duo commentators who bounce off of each other and everything. And I'm wondering, like, you didn't have a lot of stuff to look at when you were starting because you were kind of trailblazing a new area. And there must have been some lessons that you learned on your way. That are there some things that you kind of look back and you're like, oh, I really wish I wouldn't have done that, or are there some stuff? I guess maybe some advice for people just getting on the mic, and in the FGC there's a lot of that. You just have like a tournament and people jump on the mic.
Like I'll confess, even I look back and saw my stuff back in the day. It's so cringe. I wish I never existed.
Yeah. It's like, but everyone everyone looks at it and they're like, oh, you just jump on the mic and talk. That's all commentary is, right?
People
and then
think it's easy.
Yeah, and then you jump on it and you're like. And you're like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, am I being funny right now? Or like, and like it's and then the higher if it's like an actual tournament that's run, seriously, you can't like just joke around and
you gotta be presentable, right?
Yeah, so it's like what are some of the things that you kind of learned in the process, and maybe some hard lessons so other people can avoid them?
Yeah, like the do's and don'ts or something that you've learned.
One of the first things I will mention is that, when me and David, there was that one, I think it was a SCR, we commentated Daigo versus Vae, and it was like a great match.
The legendary match, the rear mirror,
Yes. And I remember after it was done, me and David were like, oh my God, like that was some of our best commentary, like clearly. And I was like, yeah, that was like, we were so good and everything. If I watch it back now, I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. So, you learn as you grow. And what's interesting about it too, is that a lot of things that I learned early on, and this is kind of fighting game related because I've always taught that when you want to learn fighting games, you have to unlearn a lot of things, So a lot of things that, I made myself not do early on, I do a lot more these days because I just realized the audience is different and all that stuff like that. So, but in terms of like just early on, like things that I tried to avoid, one of the quickest things that I learned was be yourself and don't try to imitate anybody else. At the time, one of the most popular videos in fighting games was the infamous Yipes video with the, Scoops. Oh, Scoops, Haagen-Dazs, he's so Pringles, and so like, Yipes was so good at creating those catchphrases. And so like, early on in my commentary, I kept trying to like make catchphrases and like say stuff, try to say inane stuff like that. And dude, it's just not me. It just wasn't me, and it never came off natural. And every time I would try to do it, it just sounded like your dad trying to be hip, and using like modern lingo.
Good
and
analogy.
You're just like, please, Dad, like, can you like not do that ever again? So, I was like, you know what? I shouldn't do this. Like, so a lot of times when you talk to people who do commentary, like they try to imitate their favorite commentator. And like one of the first things I tell them is don't do that. Like find your own style, commentate the way that you want to commentate. And unfortunately for everybody, for me, that turned into puns. And so, because I just make puns naturally. Like, I mean, I have tortured my friends my whole life with bad puns. And so, like, I just started doing it on commentary because that was me. That was more my natural thing. And so, weirdly enough, even if the puns are bad and everybody hates you and wants to like beat you over the head with it.
You're true to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. When it's your personality and it's what you, who you are, regardless of how much people might hate it, it still feels genuine. And it's really interesting because people can pick up on that like so well. Like if you're just genuine, like people can figure that out and just like weirdly sense it, even if they're not trying to.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's one of the main things I tell everybody is always be yourself. And, you have to find your voice. You have to find what it is that you want to be as a commentator.
Yeah.
Like I said, early on in Street Fighter 4, I was obsessed with talking about frame data. I was known as like the walking encyclopedia for Street Fighter 4 because I knew all the frame data and all this stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then nowadays, I don't talk about it as much, and a lot of people are like, oh my gosh.
That leads me to an interesting point about commentary. This is one of the things that we wanted to ask you about is, I guess, in terms of the audience, you're going to have people who really like the nerdy stuff. I know in the Tekken community, like it gets really technical, and those guys are in the audience. They know some crazy stuff, right? But then there's also a part of the audience that might just be getting into it, right? And the thing is, like, if you go too much in one direction, cater too much to the technical nerdy guys, you might be leaving out, some people who are just more casually watching. But then if you just cater to the casual guys, it's like, hey, there's some cool stuff going on. Why don't you break it down?
Yeah.
And so I guess there's a challenge in finding that right balance. And I think in your situation, you kind of came from a background where when the FGC was small, people were definitely more interested in the technical stuff to the point where they don't want to watch commentary at all. They're just like, I don't want to commentate. I just want to watch the game, right? But now, as the community got bigger and larger, now you have to start adapting to what your audience is naturally, just because it's just the sheer size of the audience. So how do you approach that, and what is kind of your philosophy on keeping that balance?
I mean, for me, I've kind of figured out that one of my biggest strengths is, storytelling. I like storytelling and stuff. I like kind of expressing like history and just kind of pulling people in through lore and history and stuff like that. And usually if I can get paired with like an Ultra David or a Sajam, they can handle a lot of the technical stuff. And so I've kind of shifted my focus a little bit less on the technical side. And especially because when you commentate at EVO, like if I commentate at like, even Capcom Cup, like finals, I'll still try to be less technical. But if I'm doing like, for example, like the online premieres that we were doing before, like I will try to, I don't like try to keep myself from being, I'll say nerdy like frame data stuff and things like that. But if you're commentating EVO, like one of the things is like, and again, it's why I always thought me and Seth were really good as a commentary pairs, because we were just both. I mean, I always label us as the biggest fanboys of the FGC, right? Like me and Seth, we just literally just like love the FGC. And so like when we commentated, we spent most of the time just being like, oh my God, this guy's so good. Oh my God, I can't believe he thought of that. Oh my God, like just kind of crazy, but telling the stories and everything but that is what EVO should be. Like that's the commentary for EVO, because this is going to be the only fighting game tournament like 80% of the audience on stream is going to see that year. Right? Like literally like 80, maybe even 90%. This is the only fighting game tournament they're going to watch throughout the whole entire year. And so, there was one time I was commentating like Evo pools or something like that. And, I'll always say like, oh, he's got a life lead, so, he can sit back and stuff. And, someone tagged me on a tweet. They were like, why does James keep pointing out these dumb, obvious things? Like, we can see the life on the screen clearly, And I was like, well, a lot of people who are watching are not you, and they don't know that the life situation could determine how you want to play. I'm commentating for them, not for you. Because I'm trying to get them hooked into fighting games. And literally the guy, and this is so not the internet, but the guy was like, wow, I never thought of that. Carry on, I was like, whoa, like that
I wish they replied to us like that. Yeah, that would be a more healthier community,
that gives me a little glimmer of hope about the internet. But I'll take everything I can
Imagine someone write like a bad comment in YouTube and then they edit it later. It's like, oh, actually, I thought of it and now it's actually a good thing. And then,
that's how I deal with that kind of, that's how I deal with the internet these days is you do have to, those like little wins where people are just like, oh, no, I didn't know that. That was a good point.
Right.
And like there is like pockets of actual conversation, like on Twitter or X or whatever.
Yeah,
It exists. It's just that there's a lot of like noise that you have to kind of get around.
Yeah,
and so it's kind of, but I guess
I mean,
that's
just,
like,
I mean, just, like, I'm gonna be leaving FGC world like in this conversation here, but like, I mean, honestly, the way social media has gotten, it's worse than it's ever has been before, like ever. Like, I think
It
it's
is
the worst
evident.
because it's really divisive now, and another thing is like, I mean, I could soapbox on social media all day. The biggest problem now is like nobody ever wants to get got on the internet, and so like
Sure.
nobody wants to be wrong anymore on the internet. So like even if you kind of realize you're wrong, you'll pick something that they said in their tweet that wasn't the main point, and you'll focus on that and go down that path to have some way to sound right and stuff, you know. And it's just like social media. I mean, honestly, social media, I think, is just like one of the like especially for the FGC. I feel like it's really
so
bad for the
okay,
FGC,
all
so-
right. So let's I kind of want to go a little bit more into this because this is something that I've always
Before you do, but I'll just squeeze in my take, right?
Okay.
So my take on this is,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
it is apparent that there are more noise, like you said. And